Well, let's start with Lamar Jackson. He releases today that he requested a trade back on March 2nd
Yeah.
for the Baltimore Ravens. What are your thoughts?
I feel like it's really impressive that they've been able to keep it hush for this long. Because for me, it's like when you have a situation that's this high profile and it's been able to stay under wraps this long, I feel like in the social media era, everything getting leaked, I feel like that's something that's pretty tremendous on the Ravens' part. But I also feel like they're kind of trying to hide the fact that he's asking for a trade right now since he doesn't have an agent. He doesn't have a guy out there who's putting out feelers to teams, putting out false information that, oh, maybe the Panthers or the Vikings are interested when really they're not. So the fact that this trade request stayed quiet for a while is something that speaks volumes to how Lamar and the Ravens are negotiating right now. But I saw this coming a year ago. I'm like, these negotiations aren't going anywhere. And what situation does a quarterback win an MVP in his first 3 years in the league, and then they don't tear up his rookie contract and give him whatever he wants? So it's like the fact that we're in this situation is pretty disappointing for me, but I'm glad that Lamar's came out. He's like, hey, sorry to all the fans out there, but they're not giving me what I'm worth. My dream is to help a team win a Super Bowl, and then can't do that here, especially with how many hits they made me take. I've taken more hits than any other quarterback in the NFL. They've given me no help here. They've given me no weapons, and then they just try and pretend that everything's fine. They asked John Harbaugh about it. They're like, "Do you think Lamar? Like, what do you see going on?" And he's like, "Oh, I see him starting here next year." So definitely an odd situation because my problem with the Ravens is, aren't you the same team who made Joe Flacco the highest paid quarterback in the NFL? And then they're like, oh, well, Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl. I'm like, yeah, Lamar still won an MVP. He's still been bringing you to the playoffs consistently. And then he would have played last year versus the Bengals if you paid him.
Let's also talk about Joe Flacco, the fact that he had Steve Smith and Jacoby Jones
Torrey Smith,
and
too.
Torrey Smith. He had loaded weapons.
Yeah, no, he had a ton of weapons, and then he had plenty of weapons to bring them back in the Denver game. They were down 21 points, I believe, Peyton Manning's first year with the Broncos, which that was really impressive. But at the same time, Ray Lewis on defense, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs, that was the real story for me. But the story for the Ravens has been our defense. We are loading up on it, but Lamar gives us a 3-score lead, and we go out there and blow it because John Harbaugh coaches like a computer. What the hell is the point of having John Harbaugh as a coach if he's just going to go out there and be like, oh, well, the computer told me that I should go for 2, even though we could have, I don't know, tied the game, given Lamar another chance to win the game. Instead, we're just going to go for 2 and lose. And then we're going to have 4 3-possession leads and blow all of them to Tua, and then we're gonna, my great defense that I invested all this money in, Tua's gonna throw for 6 touchdowns on me. Like, maybe you're the problem and not Lamar.
No, absolutely. And this is the shit that's frustrating for me because it's like all of this information out and above about Lamar Jackson. He shouldn't get his guaranteed money. Baltimore Ravens just flat out disrespecting him. You mentioned the MVP. You mentioned the fact that he's 45-16
Yeah,
as a starter in the NFL, and he's arguably the best mobile quarterback of all time. So it's like we see the Chargers are starting to negotiate with Justin Herbert to get his contract. We have Joe Burrow. He's talking to the Bengals about getting his contract a year early.
yeah.
And Lamar Jackson, I mean, like you mentioned, taking all these hits, being one of the most hit players in the NFL, it's like he's sacrificing his career staying in Baltimore. And you called it last year when he got hurt initially. It's like, I'm not going to play anymore. Now they're comparing him to Kawhi Leonard, and it's just like, this is a good move for his career. He needs to get out of Baltimore. If they're not going to give him the weapons he deserves, if they're going to keep having him take these big hits, he's going to turn into Cam Newton. And we saw what happened to Cam Newton. He had such a great peak, but then he fell off so fast because of injury. You've already seen him get banged up, and that's already hurting his value.